What's up, everybody? Welcome to Byte of Biology number 2. This little video is going to hopefully help you unpack all of the goodness that we learned about with the ecosystems STEM case. So, my goal for you is to feel like after watching this video, you go, oh, that was the point. We looked a lot at food chains or food webs, which we should probably discuss the difference between those and how there's kind of like a trickle-down effect as it affects all of the organisms, right? So, with this said, you guys, the difference between a food chain and a food web is very important, okay? When you think of a food chain, you should be thinking linear, right? One thing eats another thing, eats another thing, right? So it's kind of like a straight line. A food web is a very interconnected branching, if you will, of all these different organisms and the roles that they play. And how some might eat more than one type of organism. So it's not linear, it's a very complex system. So what we did in the ecosystems STEM case is we learned a lot about the food web in the ecosystem between the grass, the bees, the deer, the coyotes, the wolves, and the ravens. And we were even looking at their specific role within that ecosystem. We had the grass as the producer, we had bees and deer as our primary consumers, we had the coyotes as secondary consumers, the wolves were our tertiary consumers, and then we also had ravens, which are our scavengers. We didn't see decomposers in this, but there are decomposer components in most ecosystems as well, just kind of as a side note. And so what we did was we looked at the data results from our food web of Atlas National Park to see what is happening with the other organisms, okay? Okay, so then we go look at all these food webs, we collect all this data to see what is happening to these populations in Atlas National Park. And then we get to graph it. So we're looking at the percent of normal population over time from 1880 until today, and see how those percent populations change. So we're gonna look at the deer data. Ready? Woo! Ooh, deer doing nicely. All right, let's see the wolves. Ooh, that does not look good. Okay, last one, bees. Ooh, that's not looking good for them either, but it's also not terrible. So in the case, then you were given 3 options for how could we possibly solve this problem. And they gave you either reintroducing wolves into the park, since they're completely gone, maybe we should just throw some back in there and hope they repopulate it. Start hunting deer, since their population is increasing so much, or add bees into the park. And they introduced this term called a keystone species, which we learned about in the handbook, but remember that means that they control the balance of an ecosystem, right? Then it asks you to form your hypothesis. Well, if you were to guess that we should be hunting deer, unfortunately, we got a letter from the ecosystem STEM case person that they tried that, but hunting deer didn't do anything because the deer population was too high that they wouldn't be able to hunt them fast enough. So really we only came down to 2 options, which was adding bees or adding wolves. Well, after the bees, we saw, here's our kind of outcome that we saw. We still had low producers and low bees. So kind of crazy. We added more bees, but it didn't help the population size get to where it needed to be within the normal range. Our deer population was still way too high because we had a lot of deer. The coyotes also had a lot of food to eat those deer. But this did not change that the wolves stayed the same, right? Adding bees does not bring like a new creature into a forest. So we didn't see much of a change there, okay? So then we moved on to what would happen if we added wolves, and we collected data on that. All right, so then we move over to wolf results. What happens when we added 30 wolves to the park? What happens? And if you watch the simulation, you can see that wolves will kill the deer, the ravens come and they get to scavenge on a carcass, so they're happy. And then whatever is left or remaining, those decomposers that we talked about before, come back into play. So here we are, like everything is actually benefiting, right? Because those decomposers then help in turn with the nutrients for soil for grasses and plants. That means the bees are happy, they're getting their pollen. That means that the deer are getting the plants that they need to eat. So everything actually benefited by reintroducing those wolves into Atlas National Park. All right, so let's bring it home. We asked you the STEM case asks you 5 major follow-up questions, which is your case summary. And you guys, these are always worth the most points. The first one asks to explain how the animals and plants of a healthy ecosystem are organized and interact. So here you should be talking about all of the trophic levels, and they're listed out in the STEM case, so you should know what those are. Talking about that term equilibrium, it comes up many times throughout the STEM case. Talking about how the different trophic levels are weighted, so like which ones are too high, which ones are low, which ones are balanced, and how the energy cycling through the food web is affecting specifically what's happening in a healthy ecosystem. Number 2 asked you what was the health of the ecosystem of Atlas National Park like before wolves were reintroduced, and that we just watched it on the video clip. If you rewind, we saw on the graph what was happening. So which populations were too high, which ones were too low. Mention that word equilibrium, use it as it relates to that question. The third question said, explain why reintroducing wolves changed the ecosystem of the park. Well, we just talked about that. So why was it important? Well, the deer population was too big. So how did adding wolves help regulate the deer population? And you should be mentioning almost all of the trophic levels, right? We just talked about how those were all affected. You need to be specific though. I'm being very vague. You need to point out all of the things, okay? Do you think wolves are a keystone species? Explain your answer. Well, in order to answer this question, you should probably include what you know about keystone species. And talking about the wolves having an effect on the whole ecosystem, and what would happen if we removed wolves all of a sudden. That should probably give you your answer. And lastly, it says, discuss how humans changed the balance of the park ecosystem. So remember, why did the wolves go away in the first place? Okay, that was given to you in the beginning of the STEM case, so you might want to look through and read through it. How did we fix the problem? So humans played a big role in this. And then you can add anything else in that you want to add in there for points. So lots of really cool things we learned through this, especially about how the trophic levels are managed, keystone species, how data can be interpreted on tables and graphs, which we will be seeing frequently throughout the year, and so much more. So hopefully you got a lot out of our STEM case, and hopefully this video is helping break it down for you. For those of you that are watching this that haven't finished your STEM case, lucky you. Go use all of the good information that I said to go fill it out. All right, you guys. Catch you later. Thanks for watching our Byte of Biology number 2.